right? We're all here today, talk about creating strong cold outreach messaging. I think probably over the last 2 weeks, this has been a rather hot topic with group calls or one-on-one calls I've been doing. And it just really started to click for some people with some of the changes they were making with their outbound messaging that I thought, why not do a webinar for it? That way people can learn whether these are new ideas for you. For some, maybe it's an old idea that you're brushing off, but I do want to walk through kind of some of the problems I'm seeing today, ways to make some shifts, ways to think about cold outreach or even warm outreach, right? If you're like me, you're creating content on LinkedIn, you might get some warm signals, so to speak, but there is a way you'd want to approach a prospect to make sure we're speaking their world, their language, and not so much our world, our language. For example, I was on a call with someone yesterday and their messaging was centered a lot around like they're off in the beginning stages. And I'll kind of dive into why I think later on that could be a little bit of an issue. Because ultimately, if you think about it, if you walked up to a stranger on the street and you just talked about yourself and what you do and how you could help them, someone they've never met you before, they're obviously going to be taken a little bit aback. Versus if you approach someone and talk about, with a few assumptions made, what their problems are, you're able to connect with them quickly. You're able to actually strike up a conversation, which ultimately could lead to a meeting. Because ultimately, for everything we do within sales, if you ask me, it's ABC, which is always be conversing. We should just be in the business of trying to have conversations with prospects and clients. From there, we'll see where it goes. Could lead to a meeting, could lead to a deal. But if we go in with that tunnel mindset of I just have to set the meeting, a lot of people miss some signals throughout the conversation that they could have taken it a different path, which would have actually led to getting a meeting. The other thing too is I'm about to jump on from the next slide. Feel free to drop questions on the chat. I'm gonna keep an eye on it as we're going. That way I'll try to answer as many as I can throughout, or at the very end too. I'll make sure to address that as well. So again, in terms of agenda, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the problems I'm seeing, not just with people I work with, from people that reach out to me personally, as I do with people in my LinkedIn DMs, my email, and I see some of the problems when reaching out to me as a buyer as well when it comes to outbound messaging. I'm going to talk a little bit around ways you can make a little shift in your thinking to help for any future messaging you make. We're going to talk about some AI stuff at the end, but I think it's so important for us to talk more on the concepts, for us to actually think it through ourselves before we use AI as a tool. I actually just did a podcast that was released with Ben Mena, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago. And that was the whole topic, was around AI. And I'm seeing a lot of people right now who are using AI as the magic silver bullet, right? Thinking if they use AI, it'll fix their BD problems. You have to revamp your thinking. AI is a way to supplement what you're already doing, to enhance what you're already doing well, but it's not going to fix a broken process, a broken sales approach. We need to do that ourselves and then have AI help us enhance some areas. And we'll talk about messaging that stands out, of course, as well. So main thing I see, right? Problems I see right everywhere. The generic messages are everywhere. And a lot of it has to do with AI, right? Going back to what I just said around AI can be helpful. I'm seeing a lot of people rely on it as the sole way to reach out. And as a result, and I'm sure everyone on this call has probably had it, you've gotten some really bad LinkedIn messages, some cold emails, whatever, and it's just generic messaging, right? One of the most rampant ones I'm seeing right now, at least in the LinkedIn world, is, hey, Keely, I saw you made a comment on so-and-so's post. Would you be interested in my services? Like, that is awful. Like, it's such a low value reach out. They immediately go right into themselves. And there's nothing speaking to me as a business owner and my pains and what I'm going through. So as a result, prospects are tired. They're tired of seeing the AI spam. I think a couple of years ago, this approach was helpful because it was new and prospects weren't used to seeing it. But the more and more we're seeing it in our inbox, we're seeing it on LinkedIn comments, we're seeing it on LinkedIn content, right? The more and more prospects are becoming in tune with, okay, that is AI generated crap versus this is actually human who took the time to actually understand my world and create convincing copy that would cause me to want to respond. As a result, right, the problem with these first two is your valuable outreach is getting lost in the crowded inboxes, right? We have to stand out in their inboxes. It is becoming harder, obviously, to gain attention in the world we live in just because of all the things going on. So we need to make sure our outreach stands out from the rest of the flood of crappy outreach messages that they're getting. And then the last one I talked about this, most people's outreach messaging starts with themselves, right? I run this recruiting firm. I run this staffing firm. We're great about this. We have these awards. I. It has nothing to do with the prospect, their world, what keeps them up at night, their pain points and challenges. It's just solely about ourselves. And again, going back to that example of walking up to a stranger on the street, you'd probably be very worried out if someone walked up to you and just immediately started pitching themselves and what they do. You'd be wondering, why are they even approaching me? I don't quite understand. So you have to fix that, which we're going to talk about why it fails. This is why I think most people I work with, right, why their messaging has failed. They're mass producing it, minimal personalization, and better yet, probably even better said, is minimal relevance. Because personalization is one thing. Personalization would be noticing where I went to college, or maybe they know I'm into sports or whatever it is. Relevant is different. Like relevance is speaking to me as a buyer persona and my pain points and my challenges. Subject lines don't grab attention, right? That is like the key to catching attention, if I'm just being honest, because it's one of the first things they see. There's people that are focused on getting meetings rather than value. So they have the I need to go in, I need to set a meeting, I need to set a meeting, when in actuality, you need to have an ABC mindset, which is always be conversing. Like if you were to leave with one thing today when it comes to sales, it should be having an ABC mindset. If I go in with every interaction with somebody and my sole purpose is I want to have a conversation with this person, one, it's more human. Let's just start with that. It's more normal. And ultimately, it leads to better conversations because I'm not putting the pressure on myself of saying I have to set this meeting. It's no. I just want to strike up a conversation, because there are going to be times where you have a conversation with somebody and you realize they're not the right fit for you, or you're not the right fit for them. I was on a call yesterday with someone, and it was about 5 minutes in, and I realized, hey, neither one of us are the right fit for each other. I just said, hey, I'm not the right fit for you. This is why I would recommend try this out instead. And we both parted ways. I would have missed that, though, if I didn't have that ABC mindset, in this case, trying to close a deal. But the same applies with the cold outreach, is just trying to set a meeting. People position themselves as vendors, not as partners. So they lead with like the 3 Ps, right? Here's my pricing. Here's the product I offer. Or it's all about me and my company, the personal piece. Don't do that. Again, you're not going to stand out. It's all about you. It's a selfish approach. It doesn't speak to anything that keeps them up at night. So why would they listen to you? They don't even understand the value you bring to them if all you lead with is about yourself. Mobile preview. I don't know if a lot of people like think through this enough, but like, for example, right, for all of us, like most people, I think it's somewhere around like 60-70% of email traffic now is opened up on your phone. And if you're like me, when I look at my phone, right, I get a little like notation or a little pop-up saying, here's like the first 30 words or so of the email. That is valuable real estate. There's a lot of tools out there actually that you can even go into and see where the breakpoint is within the email itself. So you know, okay, if they look into my phone, here's the cutoff point. I actually use one for LinkedIn content as well. So I know, okay, where, if I'm creating a hook, where does it end for someone on mobile versus someone on a desktop? Because that is very different in what they see. And I want it to be optimized for mobile more than it is for desktop, just because most email and most content for that matter is consumed on your phone first. So that is valuable real estate to capture their attention, to actually want to click into the email and read further. So shift your thinking, right? We talked about some of the problems. When I say shift your thinking, like stop thinking like a mass emailer. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn, in your inboxes, pitching play tables, whatever it is. They're talking about how they can send out thousands of emails a day. My point, or my question always to that is, if you can send out thousands of emails a day, how can they be relevant to everyone included in there? You can't. It's just not possible. Even with the rise of AI, I know it's helping with it. It's still not there yet. You can't make relevant messaging when you send out the same message to thousands of people. Because what keeps me up at night is very different than what keeps someone else up at night. And we'll talk about buyer persona segmentation here in a minute, but it's so crucial to do that piece in the front end so that we can create relevant messaging to small pockets of target audiences that you're going after. And that's the highly personalized email too, right? If we can do this buyer persona, we can create personalized email that cuts through all the noise and clutter and everyone else who's trying to turn to some tool to save their business that'll send out thousands of LinkedIn messages, thousands of LinkedIn comments. I've seen that as a new tool recently, or emails, or whatever it is, because all they're doing is playing the number game. They're just hoping for every 1,000 emails, we'll get a positive response. I mean, there's people that are out there like bragging about that stuff. That doesn't work in the recruitment space. If I'm selling a SaaS product, right, if I'm selling a widget where my total addressable market is the entire population of Earth, sure, I can afford to burn some bridges out there and just mass blast emails to everybody. But for everyone on this call, we're recruiters and we're in a specialized niche. There's only so many people that fit our ICP that we can be reaching out to. And if we generalize our outreach, we're no different than anybody else. And even worse, there's a chance you're going to actually burn the bridges reaching out to them that actually build the bridges that we're trying to accomplish with our outreach. Every email touch point should build a story. And by that, what I mean is your first email is usually your most well thought out email for most people. The second, third, and fourth, it tends to dilute down where it's, hey, just checking in. Did you see that last email I sent? Like some variation of that. There's no value add to the conversation. So instead, what I've been kind of coaching and helping people with is think of it like a story that you're building upon. And we're going to show here in a little bit what's called the pain, agitate, solution. It's a copywriting framework and what that looks like. But that initial email should have a few pain points in there, a few challenges in there. And then each subsequent touch point from that point forward can build on that story. So that way, by let's say touch 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, they go into their inbox and they see that fourth email and they go, oh, well, this is pretty interesting. Like they caught my attention on this one. And then they see the chain that's been built on it. If they go back and look at each message, there's value being added to that conversation. There is no just checking in. Did you see my email? I'm bumping this back to your inbox, whatever it is. It's lazy writing. It's a shortcut way for salespeople to just have a touch point in the CRM. I was guilty of it plenty of times in my career. So I'm not sitting here like condemning anyone for doing it, but focus really hard of getting away from that and think, how am I going to build this story with each touch point? Whether it's email, cold call, LinkedIn message, doesn't matter, right? Each touch point itself should just build on the story that you've crafted from the beginning outreach. How I think success can be accomplished is understanding your prospect's pain points and some strategic frameworks, which we'll jump in here in a few slides. I'm not going to go much on there. Mobile versus design, again, non-negotiable. I talked about how it's a problem. You got to check out what it looks like on the phone first, because that is what is going to capture prospects' attention, is what they see on their phone. Count the I's versus the you statements. I really like this one. I wish I can give credit for who actually taught me this one, but when you craft up an email, go through it and see how many times you talk about yourself versus them. If you're outnumbering, right? If the I's outnumber the you statements, like it's all about me, and not about them, you have a problem. It needs to be rewritten. Ideally, it should be one I statement to every 2 to 3 them statements. So it really should be focused. If you focus on, hey, for every 2 or 3 they, them type statements, like what keeps them up, their pain points, I can then talk a little bit about myself. You will immediately craft better outreach messaging just with this one simple rule. But the easiest way, again, is just go through it, count it up. If it's anywhere close to the same amount of number, you have to go back and rewrite it because you're talking too much about yourself and not about them and their problems. So let's talk about revamping your approach, right? Systematic recruiter approach, kind of what I've been harping on the last couple of weeks. Persona segmentation system, like I'll cover this in the next slide, but why it's so crucial, I believe, is this is some of the sales foundational piece I'm always talking about with people. You do this today, right? Where you segment who your buyers are by ICP, by title, company size, so on and so forth. So that way, yes, today you're slowing down to do that, but come tomorrow, next week, next month, you're able to create relevant messaging to small pockets of people, which allows you to be more efficient with your outreach moving forward. Pain point identification process, like I've got some teaching, some AI prompts, things that can help you with this, but ultimately, like the easiest thing to ask yourself is what keeps them up at night from a business perspective. And think of it beyond just the hiring side of things. Yes, obviously that's the problem we solve. We as recruiters, right? If you really summed up, we fix broken hiring processes, right? Ultimately, what it comes down, we're employment experts. We know everything about that, but the impact a great hire has can be exponential within the company. But I also think a lot of hiring managers don't see that. They don't connect the dots. So when I say what keeps them up at night, think about, right? And I'll use the example of a woman I had a call with yesterday. One of the titles she would go after is a production manager within a food and beverage company. And so I asked, hey, what keeps a production manager up at night when it comes to, there's a company that had 4 vacancies. I'm like, what is the problem with that? She's like, well, they're down 4 people. I'm like, okay, well, what is the downstream effect of being down 4 people on the production line? And it is missed targets. It is lower quality. It is the production manager themselves having to get back on the line themselves. Like those are downstream effects. And that production manager, when they lay their head on the pillow at night, that's what keeps them up at night. They're not sitting there going, oh man, I have these 4 openings. They're going, oh my gosh, I cannot afford to miss my quota tomorrow. My line can't afford to miss it. I can't afford to get back on the line. I can't afford to have poor quality as a result. Like that's what's keeping up at night. And I want my messaging to speak to that pain and then ultimately connect the dots to how I bring in the right people, put them in the right seat that'll fix this problem and make their lives so much easier. It's like the transformation we're trying to get them to. Again, mobile opposite, can't harp on this enough. Pain for sequencing. I'll just jump into it. I'll just show what I mean by that here in a second. Like I'll dive deeper in that with the pain agitate solution and ADA copywriting framework. So persona segmentation, right? What does that look like? Target by role and department. So think director of IT, right? Director of quality, manager of quality, VP of quality, CEO, C-suite, right? Each one of these is a different level, different department. One of the things you should be doing in addition to mapping out your buyer personas is also mapping out every person within the account you're targeting. So if I'm targeting Acme Company, and let's say I work in, for me, I'll just use my own examples, right? Life sciences, so we can work with regulatory, quality, or the lab. I'm going to in there and map out each person within each department I could reach out to, from supervisor all the way up to the top. Another mistake, and I wasn't even going to talk about this today, but another mistake I see people make when prospecting is they only reach out to like one or two people. And they go after the tippy top, right? The CEO, the one I talked to yesterday, right? The plant managers who she was going after. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a top-down approach. Obviously, if you get in front of the right person at the top, decisions, once they're made, are finalized because they're the ones who can put pen to paper and get a contract in place. The hard part is, of course, trying to get in front of those people. They tend to be even busier. Also, the conversations we need to have are very different with someone at the C-suite versus someone as a manager. So if you were to take a, say, bottom-up approach where you're going after supervisors and managers, while, yes, they might not be the ones who sign the contract, they are the ones who are sitting on the team meetings. They are the ones who are feeling pressure from their boss. They are the ones who are incentivized to fix the problem that is a vacancy, right? And we expand about how it actually makes a bigger problem from a business perspective. But we can rally those groups of people together to create champions within the account who then bridge an intro to their manager or their director, or maybe they get to the C-suite. But like, it just gives us more entry points within the account to reach out to those people to strike up conversations. Again, going back to ABC, we're trying to have conversations. We're trying to have as many conversations with as many different people within an account. And I'll even go on this story, right? One of the best clients I ever had was a company called Medline. And my best contact, his name is Jay Denisio. And Jay never once bought from me. He had a team of customer support, like reps within the quality division. He never once had me fill a role on his team, but he was the most important person in the entire account because Jay had been there for 20 plus years and Jay knew everybody. And so I would go to Jay and I would say, Jay, can you get me introduced to Carol? Can you introduce to Alan, right? He would bring me to these people and he would say, hey, I like what Keely has to say. I think he'd be a value add to you with your hiring, whatever. And he'd make these introductions and I'd break into new groups because of that. And Jay was a manager, right? He wasn't a VP. He wasn't the C-suite. Jay was a manager who'd been there for 20 some years. But if I had not prospected into it and found Jay, the odds of me like expanding within the account would have been very low. So again, I can't harp on enough, like find as many points of contact within an account as you can. And then you can break it down, right? Buyer personas you see on the screen, right? C-level directors, managers. I even put in there too, like what keeps them up at night, like at a very, very high level, right? For the C-level, strategic impact, right? Market share, revenue share, thinking from a company at the 10,000 foot view. Directors, more around team performance. Managers, the ones that, let's say they have a 5-person team and they're down one person, which is 20% of their workforce. Like they're worried about like, how am I going to get through today, right? With the workforce I have versus a CEO of, let's say, a 100-person company. If they're down one person, they're not as concerned about that, right? 1 out of 100, it's 1%. They're worried about the bigger goals for the company. I have to make sure that I tie how I can be a value add in this particular area that'll actually have an impact on things like revenue, company growth, and some of the other things that keep C-suite individuals up at night. And then customized messaging by function area. Again, HR, sales, engineering, finance. Like I think I've harped on that enough, but like we need to customize it to the department, the buyer personas, so that way it actually is relevant and speaks to them and their problems. So I'm going to walk through then like how you can go about doing it. So let's start with the subject line. Again, valuable real estate. How does it show up on the phone? Short, sweet, intriguing enough to drive the open. Like that's the whole goal of a subject line, is to get them to open the email. We want them to say, like what else? What is inside, right? Because I've gotten some in my inbox where I see I'm like, I'm not clicking on this. Like it's a bad subject line. Maybe, hell, some are misspelled for goodness sake. Like I'm deleting it instantly. I think too, like I put this little tidbit, you can learn from like LinkedIn If you're ever spending any time on LinkedIn, a lot of like very good copywriters will talk about the hook on LinkedIn. The same applies. Like the subject line is the hook. It's what gets the reader to say, I want to read more. And LinkedIn, it's the see more button. On email, it's obviously just clicking into and seeing the rest of the body of the email itself. And as again, never waste the preview, that real estate on your phone. Like, do not waste it. Every word is crucial in there. And one of the most famous copywriting slogans out there was, and I forget the individual's name, he said, if I had more time, this letter would have been shorter, right? Copywriting, you're trying to say as much as you can with as little words as possible. So if it takes 27 words and it can take 25 words to get the same message across within my real estate, that preview real estate, do that. Like, we're trying to shorten it down. It also plays into buyer psychology. The average attention span is 6 to 7 seconds nowadays. So if your subject line doesn't capture their attention, they will move on quickly. And they'll never even see the body of the email if we don't do a good job from that piece. So the body, right? So this is the strategic framework I was talking a little bit ago. So I spent a lot of time like reading about copywriting, because ultimately there's people in this world who are paid a lot of money to create text that sells. And that's what copywriting is. And so my thought when I was reading up on it and like learning more about this was, why would I try to fight against what is already working for people that, I mean, some people are paid literally millions of dollars to do this. So if you're paid that well to be a copywriter, I'm going to steal your frameworks and use them in my sales outreach. And one of my favorite ones, because of the simplicity of it, is PASS: pain, agitate, solution. So as you can see right there, step one, we're going to identify, and I'm going to show some examples here in a minute, but we're going to identify their specific problems. Again, what keeps them up at night? We're talking there to start. We then want to agitate, like stir the pot, so to speak, make what appears to be like one small problem into bigger and bigger problems. And then ultimately, we're looking to present a solution, right? Something to get them to say, this person seems to know my world, seems to understand what's keeping me up at night. And now they're mentioning they have helped companies in my similar situations with said problems. And that's where like the soft CTA would be call to action, comes into play. So here's like an example, right? And in terms of formatting, it's awful. I just did in bullet points. So it was very easy to see the difference. Like, this is not how an email should look, obviously, but I just felt the need to say that. The first part right now, I'll even read it out loud here for real quick. With unemployment 3.7%, and this was actually when we did with the client, right? Recruiting for rural Southwest Ontario locations means you're competing against urban centers offering higher salaries and shorter commutes. This often results from positions remaining open for weeks longer than necessary, right? That's a pain point. It's like, hey, look, this small firm in particular is a clean tech company in rural Ontario. Like, if I'm a hiring manager, even a small company owner, I say like, yeah, that is a pain point. Like, I do deal with that. Like, but everyone else is dealing with that. Like, that's just a pain, but I'm not feeling the need to respond yet. That's where the agitate part comes in, right? The ripple effects are real. Your award-winning culture can't compensate for overworked teams covering vacant positions, or the quality compromises that happen when hiring managers feel pressured to just fill the role. Right. So I'm taking what's a small problem, making it bigger and bigger. And honestly, as I'm like self-critiquing myself with this one, I should have added a third agitate point, because I do believe in like the rules of three when you're doing some of this outreach stuff. Because going back to that building the story, if I've got 3 agitate points to hit on, message 2 could be about agitate point 1, message 3 could be about agitate point 2, and message 4 can be about agitate number 3. So a lot of numbers there, but the point being, like, you can build on those. And there is a psychology of the rule of 3. I forget exactly what it says about it, but like, I just try to hit on 3 agitates every time. And then the solution, hey, we recently helped a manufacturing client with multiple sites, rural sites, right? Speaking directly to this person. Because again, going back to the relevance and persona segmentation, if I had sent this message, right, mass spamming, which we're not going to be doing because that's what everyone else is doing. If I had sent this message to a company that's here in Chicago, right, who works in the downtown of Chicago, how would this speak to them all? They're not rural. This doesn't speak to their pain points at all. They have different pain points. They have different things that keep them up at night. So this message isn't relevant to them. But for everyone that is in Southwestern Ontario, that is in a rural part, this speaks directly to them. It's almost as if I'm sitting down with them and I've been in their company. I understand what they're going through, and I'm trying to speak to that. So that's why relevance can be so important, because it cuts through the noise. But again, continue on, right? We've helped rural clients with multiple rural sites reduce their average time to fill from 47 days to 27, while actually improving quality of hire scores, right? So that was a direct quote taken from the client I'm working one-on-one with, but like, that's a huge value add when it comes to ways we can immediately help them out. And then the soft call to action would, hey, open to a 15-minute conversation next week to discuss how we can adapt the approach for Acme Company, right? I'm asking for the meeting. I'm not saying, hey, you want to meet Tuesday or Thursday? Like, hey, open to a chat, right? Something as simple as that. And you can even shorten it down to just what I said. Want to learn more? Open to a chat. Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Like anything just to, again, ABC, to get a conversation started. So here's another one. I didn't provide example because I didn't want to go through this, but this is the ADA framework. So attention, interest, desire, action. If you really like want to geek out about this stuff, just go into like any LLM or even use Google and just ask like what are the top copywriting frameworks are. PASS, ADA, and BNB, which are BAB, before, after, bridge, are typically like the first three that will show up for you. They're simple in structure. Obviously, the messaging within there takes a little bit like work to figure out how you're going to like say what you want to say. But just having this, like, hell, even if you went into your email, and I'll just go back a slide, like if you even went back to your email and just put pain, agitate, and solution, and then like Mad Libs it filled in each one of them, you can create stronger messaging than 95% of people out there. Like I made up the stat 95%, but I do firmly believe that because people aren't doing this. They're not taking necessary steps to create relevant message that speaks to their buyer's pains. So why does this work, right? It's you, them focused. If we're going back to, again, self-critiquing here, if we're going back to them, we're talking about them. Like notice how often I talk about myself. The only part where or in this case, we, right, with the individual I'm working with, we talk about ourselves was in the solution piece. Everything else is focused on they, them, their problems, what keeps them up at night. It's not about me, what I can do, what I offer. Like none of that stuff comes until at the very end after I've talked all about them and their problems. Again, I can't harp on this enough. It's why it works, speaks up to them. It speaks to what keeps them up at night, creates an emotional reaction, right? If I'm reading this as a hiring manager in Southwestern rural Ontario, I read that. I'm like, man, that is exactly what I'm going through. Like I'm sitting there. It's almost like they get me, right? It's like they understand my world. They get what I'm going through. And if they understand those things, I'm inclined to believe they know how to help me fix these problems as well. So I'm inclined to actually take a conversation with them. And helps connect the dots too. I was saying that earlier on. What appears to be like a small problem, some sort of vacancy, long time to fill, turnover, whatever, is like, yeah, it's a pain. But like if I could connect the dots to the downstream business effects, it only agitates it. It makes the problem even bigger. I always like to say it makes mountains out of molehills, and it allows them to see, oh dang, this is a much bigger problem than I realized. Because of these things, this downstream effects occurring, which is affecting my life, my team's life, my boss's life, the company, whatever it is, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And it's not just confined to my group, right? If you do a really good job, and this is a topic for another time around discovery meetings, you can pull out how one department who's struggling has a direct impact on other departments, and you can point out the ripple effect that's occurring because what appears to be a small problem.